It is truly a pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight, someone who has been an inspiration to so many people, both in his home city of Newark and around the state and around the nation. So I know you want to hear from him, not from me, so without further ado, Mayor Cory Booker.
Good afternoon. And I want to congratulate, before I get to the graduates, I want to congratulate all those people, family and friends, mothers and cousins and uncles and aunts, all those people who love these graduates so much and believed in them and gave them the support that made this day possible. Congratulations to you, first and foremost. I also want to congratulate the faculty and staff. Each and every one of them gave their heart and soul and passion in educating these students, and today is a day for your pride as well. I also want to give a lot of recognition to the stewards of this institution, those people who are on the Board of Trustees, and this being a proud county institution. I want to give congratulations to all the county freeholders here assembled, and perhaps, even though I might get in trouble when I get home right now, but perhaps the greatest county executive in the state of New Jersey, your county executive as well. Please don't tell Essex County Executive I said that. And now let me get to what I want to talk about. Real quick, I just want to tell the graduates that you all consider yourself lucky that you did not have family like mine. Because every single graduation, my parents did not see it as a chance to congratulate me on what I did. My entire family gathered together and saw it as an opportunity to embarrass me fully and thoroughly. You see, if it was one of those graduations that was indoors where they had tickets, forget that. My parents started the Booker ticket counterfeit controversy. If they were anywhere near me, they would randomly scream out my name. That's not an invitation. And after everything was done, they would all gather around me, and from my 8th grade graduation all the way to my last graduation from law school, they would come up and descend upon me with the same stories and jokes I had heard all my life. Of course, it would be, you see, boy, the tassel is worth the hassle. Yes, I see that, okay, next. And then my grandfather, of course, he would trot on up and say, you see, boy, I'm looking at this graduation program. You didn't graduate summa cum laude or magna cum laude. You were just thank you laude. I got out of here. Like, yes, Granddad, yes. I'm very thankful. I did graduate from here. But then they would get serious, and they would begin to give me their heartfelt advice. And indeed, even though I had heard it many times, it was very important to hear. They would remind me that the degree I hold was paid for by the blood, sweat, and tears of my ancestors, that I didn't necessarily earn it simply through studying tests and papers, that earning it would come not in receiving it, but earning it would come from what I do with it every day from here on out. They would tell me that I need to understand, most importantly, more than anything at all, that I needed to be a person that remembered from where I came from, and that I had an obligation. Indeed, my father, who was always present amongst them all, would tell me, most importantly, that I need to understand that I was the result of a conspiracy of love. Now, I say that term because for my father, it was very true. My dad was born in the Deep South in 1936. He was born to a single mother, and he was born poor. Now, I say that if my father was here, he would begin heckling me and yelling, boy, I was not born poor. He would say proudly, I was just po, P-O. I couldn't afford the 2 letters. I wasn't so fancy. I was just a po' boy from North Carolina. And even though my father's stories get more extreme with the years, the weather patterns have changed from stories with rain to stories with hail the size of baseballs, then the hail became the size of footballs, then they became the size of Cadillacs. And I've recently had to argue with him that there's no way in North Carolina they could have had a tsunami. The truth is that my father did have a difficult time. And when he says conspiracy of love, he is speaking very literally. You see, his mother couldn't take care of him, and it was people whose names I do not know who came together and put a roof over his head and food on the table, kept him focused on what was important in his schoolwork. And then when my father got ready to go to college, he couldn't afford it and was not going to go and just go to work. And it was people in that town that put money together so that he could afford his first semester's tuition and then get a job to work his way through school. The conspiracy of love would continue when my father got out of college and landed in Washington, D.C., a young black man with a degree, and suddenly there were a whole bunch of people that came there in the 60s to help him get jobs in companies that before never hired African Americans. Black people and white people, through organizations like the Urban League, started working with him and helping him to get opportunities. He became the first black to work for an oil company, then the first African American to work for a department store. Then he and my mom became two of the first blacks to work for this small tech company you all may have heard of called IBM. Then my parents, again that conspiracy of love, moved here to New Jersey. But at that time, in the late 60s, early 70s, they wouldn't show black families homes in white neighborhoods. And this conspiracy of love, people whose names I do not know, joined together in something called the Fair Housing Council. And every time my parents were turned away from a home, they would send a white couple out behind them. Ironically, my dad says their name was Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Now, I don't know if that's true, but they were white. And on one day, my parents found a house they loved up in Bergen County. They were told it was sold. The Browns went and found it was still for sale. They put a bid on the house. And on the day of the closing, my father, with one of these conspirators, someone whose name I don't know, a lawyer, went with my dad to go to the closing and confront the real estate agent for a violation of New Jersey fair housing law. The real estate agent knew he was caught, was confronted, and what he did next shocked my father. He stood up and punched the lawyer in the nose. Then he sigged a dog on my dad. Now, the size of the dog is up for some debate. My father says it was Cujo. My mom whispers that it was just Toto. But before you knew it, a court case ensued, and a little while later, my parents, with their two young baby boys, move into this town to become, as my father used to call us, 4 raisins in a tub of vanilla ice cream. And my parents would look at me and my brother as we grew, as we worked hard to gain accomplishments like the ones you were enjoying, and they would remind us time and time again. My father would say it in a colorful way. He would say, "Boy, don't you walk around here like you hit a triple. You were born on third base. You drank deeply from wells of freedom and liberty that you did not dig. You eat lavishly from banquet tables prepared for you by your ancestors. You sit under the shade of trees planted by others. You have an obligation. You are not here for your own comfort and convenience. You are here to go out into the world and fight to change it and make it a better place. You need to live with that courage of conviction, grounded in the truth of who you are and determined to engage an imperfect world." Well, I took that advice for my last graduation. I moved to Newark, New Jersey, and began working in a tough neighborhood. And the first person I met seemed to have studied at the same table as my dad. She was the tenant president for what became some high-rise public housing projects. I always joke that I got my BA from Stanford, but I got my PhD from the streets of Newark because it was women like her that took me aside and told me what was what. I actually knocked on her door with this arrogant strength in my heart that I was going to come here and help her. I like riding in on my white knight. I felt like a white horse. I felt like John Wayne as I pulled up and I said, "Ma'am," and she opened the door and she goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Cory Booker." I almost said, "Little Philly, I'm here to help you." And she looked at me and she said, "You want to help me?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." And she said, "Well, follow me." And she took me down 5 flights of stairs into the middle of Martin Luther King Boulevard. And she stood with me there and she said, "Tell me what you see around you." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Describe what you see." And I said, "Well, I see abandoned building, I see graffiti, I see problems." And before I could even finish, she looked just angry with me. And I stopped speaking, and this elderly woman just looked at me and she said, "You can't help me." And she turned around to walk away. Well, I ran after her. I stopped her on the side of the street and I said, "Ma'am, what are you talking about?" And she wheels around and she looks at me hard, wagging her finger, and she goes, "Boy, you need to understand something. That the world you see outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. And if you're one of those people who only sees problems and darkness and despair, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're one of those stubborn people who every time you open your eyes, you see hope, you see opportunity, you see possibility, you see love and the face of God, then you can be one of those people that helps me. And she turned around and walked away, leaving me standing there looking at my feet, scratching my head, thinking to myself, okay, grasshopper, thus endeth the lesson. You see, this is what I've come to learn. What I see in the world is more a reflection of who I am than what the world is. That ultimately, as you go about your journey, you always have a decision to make. Will you tell your truth to this world, or will you shrink from your truth? Will you infuse the world with your authenticity, or will you play small? My parents, for one, told me, boy, don't you walk around here like that. You weren't born to fit in, you were born to stand out. That is who you are, graduates. And don't fool yourself that thinking life is about some distant destination. Life is about right now. I've come to learn that ultimately in my life, the biggest thing I can do in any day is a small act of kindness. It's the moments that matter. And too many people miss them. One of the most ridiculous examples I have of this truth is a simple plane flight that I took from Newark Airport to San Francisco when I was flying as a 19-year-old to go to college. And I got on this plane, and you have to understand, back when I was 19, a sophomore in college, you all have to help me for a second, I was a football player. I was chiseled. Close your eyes and imagine that for a second if you can. I was the original New Jersey situation. I was chiseled then, I just jiggle now, but imagine that for the sake of this story. I get on this airplane and it is packed wall to wall with people, every seat taken. The door closes and people are pushing each other, shoving carry-on bags, but somehow I had an oasis. My big 6'3" body had an entire row. Nobody was sitting there. I looked around at all these other uncomfortable people, looked back at me, and I spread myself out and I started thinking to myself arrogantly, look at this, God loves me more than these poor people. And I began to start singing my songs, yes, Jesus loves me. And then just as I got totally smug, the door to the plane opens up and the cabin fills with this cacophonous scream that had everybody shut up and look at the door. Who was being killed out there and what was about to come through? And into the plane, this screaming comes louder. And we all see a woman standing there with a little boy in one arm and a baby in the other. And immediately everyone goes from the baby and looks directly at me. And I could see everybody thinking, you smug little boy. The people come over to me and they say, we're sitting there. And I said, are you sure? And they go, sir, there's no other seats. We're sitting there. And I watched the three bodies sit in the two seats. And I thought to myself, this is going to be the worst flight of my life. But then I realized something. There's one choice we have in every second of our existence. One important choice. To accept things as they are or take responsibility for changing them. And I had an evolved thought. I said, the circumstances I can't control. You cannot control what life will deliver unto you. But the power you have is in making the choice to how you will meet those circumstances. And I decided instead of surrendering to circumstance, allowing this to be the worst flight of my life, I'm going to make this the best flight of my life. And suddenly I turned to the woman and I said, ma'am, this is going to be fun. And she looked stressed out and she could tell everybody's eyes were like daggers hitting her. And I said, let me help you. And I started making faces at that baby. It didn't make the baby stop crying, but it made her laugh. And before you knew it, we're taking off. And the little boy who was sitting next to me, we start playing tic-tac-toe and start having fun. The woman was relaxing. I started telling the boy all my best jokes made for a 7-year-old. Oh, y'all are challenging me now. Like, why did Tigger and Eeyore have their heads in the toilet? Because They were looking for poo. I'm sorry, the county executive just groaned in pain. I'm sorry, sir, I'll be banned from the county now. By the time we landed, it was the best flight of my life, the quickest one I'd ever had across country. We exchanged addresses, said we would keep in touch, but we did not keep in touch. 5 years passed, 10 years passed, 15 years passed, and now I'm running for mayor of Newark, New Jersey, in a street fight. And on my most discouraged day, I got this letter in the mail from a woman who says, "You may not remember me, but I met you 15 years ago on an airplane. It was the first time I was flying with my kids. I thought it was going to be such a difficult flight, but I then sat next to you and you made it so good. My family is in Newark. We own a factory. We employ Newark residents. Come, let us help you with your campaign." The little boy ended up being one of our best campaign volunteers, and the county executive will appreciate this. They ended up becoming very big campaign contributors. You see, this is what life is about. It's not about tomorrow or next month. It is about now. This moment. Will you tell your truth? Will you let the world see you for all that you are? Now, this is not easy. There are days that you are going to have where you will define courage by just getting out of bed, putting your feet on the floor, and listening to your heart beat that rhythmic pulse. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. You will find and encounter challenges that you can't even imagine right now. But on your journey, I want you to know a few things. One, embrace struggle. Don't walk away from it. As Frederick Douglass said, in life, there can be no progress without struggle. In life, you don't get everything you pay for, but you must pay for everything that you get. On your journey, know this, that it is better to have your ship sunk at sea than rot in the harbor. You were not built for comfort and convenience. You were built for trials. You were built for challenges. You were built to overcome. The next thing on your journey is love those who hate you. Or in today's parlance, don't let your haters be deflators, let them be your motivators. Let their lies fuel your rise, and let their fire take you higher. The obstacles in your life are brilliantly disguised opportunities. The problems in your life are brilliantly disguised possibilities. The pitfalls in your life are brilliantly disguised pools of potential. Indeed, I tell you, the times that you get knocked down in your life will be the times that you discover the best treasure. In fact, in your deepest darkness, you will find inside of you an inextinguishable light. This is important to know. And also, I want you to know that in the depth of this journey that you are about to take, make sure you give to others. This is how I want to end. It is the greatest lesson of them all. And I end it with a short story of the first person I represented as a lawyer. Allow me to change some of the facts to respect for the family, but it was an elderly woman living in public housing projects in New Haven, Connecticut, and I went and I saw her, and I could see scars on her face mixed with deep lines. It looked like a map of a place that I would never want to go to. She sat me down and explained to me she was being evicted from her housing because her 18-year-old nephew was caught with 38 vials of crack cocaine. And the housing authority had a draconian law that said if one person is caught with drugs, then the entire family will be evicted. I remember going back to my supervising attorney and saying, this is injustice. We're going to fight this case. I was all charged up, and she just looked at me sympathetically and said, you're a lawyer. You don't represent your own agenda for justice. You represent a client. Don't disrespect them. Tell them all the facts and let them choose what they want to do, because you may want to fight this case, and I'm telling you right now, I've seen lots of these. You have a 10 or 15% chance at best of winning this, and if you force her to fight this case and you lose, you'll go home devastated, but she won't have a home to go to at all. You bring her here, respect this elderly woman, and tell her what her choice is. And I did just that. I picked her up and I brought her back to the legal center, and I sat with her for what was probably one of the longest hours of my life. And all she could do during that hour, as I explained the situation, was cry and say, "Why are they doing this to me? I've done nothing wrong." But at the end of that hour, I saw a miracle. And I'm a big believer that there are miracles abounding around us every day, but we just don't take time to get out of our own drama and focus on this beauty. And this miracle to me was just a simple question. At the end of the hour, this elderly woman, hunched over on the table crying, suddenly closed her eyes, pulled her hands into a fist, opened her eyes, and she said, "Tell me something." And I said, "Yes." She goes, "If I decide to fight this case, will it help other people?" And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I don't know if you heard me, we only have a 10 or 15% chance of winning this case. But yes, if we win, we could use it as a great precedent or an example." And I couldn't even continue. She heard yes. She pulled within herself again, clenched up her fists, and this time she opened her eyes and looked like a woman possessed. She slammed her fist on the table, stood up, and she looked at me. I saw in her eyes now the truth of who she was. She revealed herself to me, and she said very simply and slowly, 10 or 15% is enough for me. We will fight. And she strode out of that room with the regality and honor amidst her spirit. I watched her walk away, turned to my supervising attorney. We stared at each other for a few moments, and then I realized I had to give a woman a ride home, so I ran after her and gave her a ride back. I worked for 3 days on this case, doing everything I could. Back in those days, I even called Johnny Cochran up. God rest his soul. On the 4th day, I get a phone call from my supervising attorney who says, "Sit down." I go, "No, come, I'm busy." She goes, "No, you need to stop and listen to me." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "Cory, last night your client, your very first client, had a heart attack and died." And I remember just not even finishing, slamming down the phone. I began to fill with rage and anger. I started to cuss like a sailor to myself. And then suddenly, God stopped me in my tracks and said, "You arrogant young man, there's purpose in everything. You think that I put the great Cory Booker there to save this poor woman? No. I put that woman there to save the poor Cory Booker." You see, at the beginning of my professional career, right before my last graduation, the universe opened up through this profound woman of dignity and strength and told me this, that in all of your life, the most powerful force of all, a force that has ancient roots, that the Greeks called agape, that the Hebrews called chesed. It's this force that you, as a young boy from New Jersey, simply know as love. And it's not a weak word, it is strong. It's not soft, it is hard. It's not easy, it is difficult. Love. It's not a being word, it is a doing word. It means that you have the courage to tell your truth, to infuse your passion, to be present in the moment, to do for others, and to stand up and say to this world, "I will not accept you as you are. I will make you into a better reflection of the common aspirations of my ancestors." This is your calling, and this is what you must do. I end where I started, with my family. My parents would read to me many nights before I went to bed, and they read to me this one poem. And I end with these simple words. The poem is about swearing an oath. They wanted me to be proud of my state and proud of my nation, and that my life, my parents wanted me to be a testimony to my truth. They wanted me to swear my oath every day, and this poem is just about that. Graduates, I end with the words of Langston Hughes, who said, "Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, but yet must be, the land where everyone is free. The poor man, the Indian, the Negro, me. Who made America? whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must make our mighty dream live again. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, but I swear this oath America will be. Class of 2012, swear your oath, not with your words, but with your actions and your deeds. Put your hand to your heart, but also outstretch it to another. Swear your oath so that one day this world does resound with truth and with justice, with liberty and freedom. This is your calling, not tomorrow, but today. And if you can live with this courage, if you live with this honor and authenticity, then this will not be your proudest day, but you will go out into this world and make Mercer County College truly proud of the way that you have forged and the glory that you have set and the light that you have ignited in a world so desperate for you. Thank you very much and congratulations.